You ever have one of those moments where your whole world just kinda clicks into a different gear? Like a hidden switch flipped in your head and suddenly everything, your memories, the little details, your gut feelings, start to reorganize themselves and make sense in the worst possible way? That was me 2 weeks ago. I'm 34M, been married to my wife, Danny, 32F, for 6 years. We met in college. She was studying neuroscience, and I was in pre-med. I ended up veering off into biotech consulting, but she stuck with it. Got her PhD, landed a research position at a university lab. Her specialty? The human brain. Always said it fascinated her how the brain is the control center of everything. She'd go on about how the cerebrum handles logic, the cerebellum coordinates movement, the brainstem keeps us alive. I used to find it cute how passionate she was. But lately, I started to feel like the only thing she was studying was how to manipulate me. The first red flag hit me on a Sunday. I came home from a run and saw her laptop open on the kitchen table. I wasn't snooping, I swear. But the tab said Neural Mapping Log, Session 19. I figured, cool, she's working on one of her experiments. But I glanced a little closer, and there were lines like, Subject responded to emotional manipulation by withdrawing. Hypothesis confirmed. Eliciting jealousy yields a spike in vulnerability. We'll repeat scenario to confirm. I thought it was fiction at first, like a writing prompt or part of a grant proposal. But when I asked her about it, casually, mind you, she flipped. Oh my God, you're so paranoid. It's just part of a thought experiment I'm drafting for a behavioral psych proposal, she said, waving me off like I was some insecure idiot. Then she changed the subject and picked a fight over how I left the laundry in the dryer too long. Classic deflection. Still, something stuck with me. Something wrong. It wasn't just the notes. It was the way she'd started talking to me in that cold, clinical way, like I was a subject under glass. She used to be warm, even affectionate. But lately she'd just tilt her head and stare at me when I vented about work. She'd say stuff like, "It's interesting how you always react this way when you feel out of control." Like she was diagnosing me. I didn't say anything that night, but I started keeping notes of my own. So I started paying attention, like, really paying attention. I guess you could say I went full Sherlock with a dash of Freud. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed to know if I was losing my mind, or if Danny was playing me like some neurological experiment. Turns out, the brain doesn't just control your body. It tries to protect your heart too. But mine? It was getting rewired, whether I liked it or not. Danny began disappearing for late lab nights more often. Said they were conducting sleep studies on volunteers and needed to monitor them overnight. Okay, sure. Except she'd come home at 4:30 a.m. smelling like mint body wash and someone else's cologne. I even asked her once, "Is that a new shampoo or something?" She didn't even blink. One of the students spilled eucalyptus oil. It's all over the lab. I nodded. But that smell? It wasn't eucalyptus. It was Axe. I know because I wore it in high school and got made fun of for it. Another night, I offered to bring her dinner to the lab. Thought maybe we could eat together for once, like old times. She snapped. God, no. You can't just show up here. It's a sterile environment. You'll contaminate the whole experiment. So I did the rational thing, waited 3 nights, then drove down to the building to surprise her. Her car wasn't there. The security guard told me the lab had been closed for fumigation since last week. I swear I stood there in the parking lot, staring at that empty space like I'd just walked in on her cheating. Only, I hadn't. Not yet. But my cerebrum was lighting up like a Christmas tree with dread. When she got home that night, 5 a.m., I didn't say anything. I didn't scream or accuse. I just watched her walk in, drop her bag, and pretend everything was fine. And that's when it really hit me. She was lying to me effortlessly. Like it was a reflex. Like my emotions were just variables in a case study. The worst part? She was still sweet sometimes. She'd kiss me good morning, bring me coffee while I was working, even laugh at my dumb jokes. But it all felt artificial. Like she was mimicking what a wife should do. Not because she loved me, but because she was testing something. Maybe even testing me. Okay, so at this point I was spiraling. I knew something was off, but I needed proof, not just feelings. You ever second-guess yourself so hard you start wondering if you're the crazy one? That's where I was. So I started doing what I never thought I'd do in a marriage. I went behind her back. I placed a cheap AirTag in the bottom lining of her gym bag, the one she always carried to the lab. It felt gross, invasive, paranoid, but honestly, she'd already taken a scalpel to my trust. I just needed to know what reality I was living in. That night, she left for another overnight shift. She kissed my cheek like everything was normal. I smiled back, nodded, said, "Be safe." Then I watched the tracker. She didn't go to the lab. She went to a residential address on the other side of town, near the university housing complex. Stayed there all night. Moved locations once to a 24-hour diner around 3 a.m., then went back to the same apartment. Left around 5:40 a.m. and came home yawning, claiming the experiment took longer than expected. I didn't confront her right away. I waited, collected the address, Googled it. It belonged to a guy named Dr. Neil B******, not using his full name, a fellow researcher in her department. A behavioral neuroscience guy who just so happened to publish a joint paper with Danny 3 months ago. I read it, too. All about neural adaptability and trust-based social frameworks. The irony nearly gave me a stroke. I clicked through his public LinkedIn and found a photo of the guy grinning, confident, slightly smug. Same jawline I'd seen on the shadowy FaceTime reflection 2 weeks earlier when Danny accidentally answered a student's call in the kitchen and flipped her laptop shut so fast you'd think it was porn. It wasn't a student. It was Neil. I didn't sleep that night. I just laid in bed next to her, listening to her breathe, wondering how long she'd been building this second life. And the worst part wasn't the cheating. It was the method of it all. The lies. The manipulation. The gaslighting. She wasn't just betraying me, she was studying how I would break. And I was breaking. The next morning, she made pancakes. Let me just pause here to say, Danny never makes pancakes. She hates carbs. Thinks maple syrup is a blood sugar bomb. But there she was, flipping flapjacks in my old college hoodie like she was in some Pinterest ad for a perfect marriage. Thought I'd surprise you, she said. You've been stressed. I can tell. Your prefrontal cortex must be fried. She winked. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I almost respected how deep her game went. She was using neuroscience lingo like it was foreplay, trying to win me back with cognitive empathy and a side of butter. And maybe part of me still wanted to believe her. She sat down across from me, coffee in hand, and started talking about her upcoming conference in D.C., a 3-day event with round-the-clock workshops. She said they'd barely have time to sleep. Right. Because sleeping was apparently reserved for Neil's apartment. I asked, real casual, is Dr. B**** going to? She blinked, hesitated, then smiled. No, he's presenting at a different event in Seattle. Interesting. Because his LinkedIn said he'd just posted a photo of her and him together at last year's DC conference, with the caption, excited to speak again alongside the brilliant Dr. Danny, last name, this year. Dynamic duo. I didn't confront her, not yet. My heartbeat was hammering in my ears, but I forced myself to play the part. The supportive husband. The trusting fool. Later that day, I texted one of her colleagues from the lab, someone I'd met once at a fundraiser, a grad student named Laura. I played dumb and said I wanted to send flowers to the lab during Danny's big sleep experiment week. Asked if they'd be around or if they were still shut down for fumigation. She replied within 5 minutes. Fumigation? LOL. We haven't shut down for anything. Danny hasn't been here all week, though. Thought she took PTO for a writing retreat. Writing? Retreat. This woman was triple-layering her lies like lasagna. At this point, I wasn't even angry. I was just stunned. Like I'd been handed a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing for years, and now, suddenly, the picture was forming and it wasn't pretty. She was lying to me. Gaslighting me. Studying me like I was a brain in a jar. You ever feel your heart catch up to what your brain already knows? Like, there's a delay between logic and love. My cerebrum had all the facts. It knew she was cheating. It knew she'd been lying for months, maybe longer. It knew she was emotionally dismantling me with a scalpel smile and a PhD in manipulation. But my heart still wanted to be wrong. Still wanted her to come clean, cry, say she messed up, say it meant nothing, say she loved me. Instead, I got more pancakes. I finally cracked one night when she said she'd be pulling an all-nighter at the lab to finish grant applications. At this point, I was done playing detective. I wasn't going to track her, spy, or ask trick questions. I followed her. In person. Waited 30 minutes, then drove to that same apartment complex. Sat across the street with the engine off. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, I saw her walk up to his building. Laughing, holding takeout. No lab coat, no research materials, no urgency. Just her, comfortable, casual, slipping into another man's life like it was her backup plan. I didn't follow her inside. I didn't call her out. I just sat there, staring at the apartment like it was a black hole sucking the last 6 years of my life into nothing. That was the moment I think I finally accepted it. This woman didn't love me anymore. Maybe she hadn't for a long time. Maybe she never really had. I went home, packed a bag, took the dog, left a sticky note that said, "You can keep the study. I'm done being your subject." I stayed with my brother that night. When she came home in the morning, she called me 5 times. Then texted, "Why are you being dramatic? Can we talk about this like adults? I don't know what you think you saw, but you're way off. You're having a stress response. Classic amygdala overreaction." That last one. That was it. Even in that moment, she couldn't speak to me like a husband. Just like Data. I didn't respond to her texts that day. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to hear more clinical jargon or rationalizations for what I knew she did. But she kept messaging me like I was part of a peer-reviewed paper she hadn't finished editing yet. That night, she emailed me. Emailed. Subject line, "Open dialogue and repair opportunities." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I miss you." No, dialogue and repair opportunities. I didn't even know what to do with that. It was like receiving a breakup letter from your therapist instead of your wife. Inside, she laid it all out. Kind of. She admitted to emotional overlap with Neil. Said the connection organically evolved over shared intellectual pursuits. Claimed she didn't want it to happen, but that it emerged from a place of cognitive resonance. Then she tried to reframe my reaction as a trauma-induced disassociation pattern. You read that right. She cheated, and then diagnosed me. I'm not saying I'm perfect. God knows I checked out for a while during the pandemic. I worked long hours. I was tired. Maybe I got a little dull to her. But I never lied to her. Never stepped outside. Never treated her like a lab rat in an experiment on emotional thresholds. She followed up the email with one last line. "If you're open to a mediated conversation, I believe we can co-construct a new framework for our relationship." I didn't even know what that meant. Was she proposing we redesign our marriage like a clinical study? Try out polyamory because it suited her new cognitive evolution? Invite Neil over for peer collaboration and pancake Sundays? It was cruel. That's what it was. Not just the cheating, but the way she intellectualized everything to avoid taking real responsibility. She couldn't say, "I hurt you." She could only say, "We are experiencing interpersonal turbulence due to asynchronous emotional development." I sat in my brother's guest room, lights off, just replaying the last year in my head. The lies. The cover-ups. The cold clinical language she used to dodge every hard truth. It hit me all at once. She hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She dehumanized me. I didn't answer her email. I didn't respond to her texts or calls. What I did do was talk to a lawyer. I know that might seem fast, but honestly, the marriage had already ended. It just took my nervous system a while to catch up. I wasn't in shock anymore. I wasn't confused. I was clear. It was like a switch had flipped. For the first time in months, I felt something close to control. I've been her emotional guinea pig for too long. She treated our relationship like a fMRI scan. Measuring what I'd tolerate, how long I'd blink before reacting, how much betrayal she could inject between layers of sweet words and scientific excuses. But that morning, I woke up and realized I wasn't going to be the subject of her experiment anymore. I called her from a blocked number. She picked up on the second ring. "Hello." She sounded cautious, like she was waiting for me to yell. I didn't. I just said, "Check your inbox. You'll find a message from my attorney." Silence. Then, "You're really doing this?" "Yes. But we haven't even had a real conversation. You haven't let me explain. You lied about the lab. You lied about DC. You lied about him. What's left to explain?" And then she said it. The wildest line I've ever heard from another human being. "You're being reactive. I honestly think this is a trauma reenactment from your childhood. You're abandoning connection." I laughed. Loud, bitter. "No, Danny. I'm not reenacting trauma. I'm ending it." Click. That was the last time I ever spoke to her directly. The email from my lawyer hit her inbox 2 minutes later. I moved forward with divorce proceedings. We didn't own property together, thank God. No kids. We did share a car, but I told her she could keep it. I just wanted peace. It was like burning down a house that had become unlivable. I'd rather stand in the ashes than breathe in the poison one more day. I didn't expect her to take it well. I hoped she would. Part of me still thought she might show a flicker of humanity and just say, "Okay, you're right. I blew it. I'm sorry." Instead, she doubled down hard. The next day, I got a message from one of my friends, Sean, who also knew Danny through a few university mixers. He screenshotted something she posted on her professional Instagram account. A long, emotionally manipulative caption under a black and white photo of neurons and brainwaves. When people are threatened by your growth, they'll pathologize your truth. Women in academia are often punished for their autonomy, but I refuse to apologize for evolving. I stared at the post, slack-jawed. She turned cheating on her husband into a feminist neuroscience manifesto. I hadn't even told anyone outside my brother and my lawyer what had happened. Meanwhile, she was out there planting seeds that I was some insecure man who couldn't handle a strong, independent woman with emotional range. That's when something in me, some little mental fuse, finally snapped. I'd been calm, rational, civil, but seeing her frame herself as a victim of intellectual repression after what she did, that rewired something in me. I opened a private group chat with 3 of her lab colleagues I'd met socially over the years, people she used to praise as true peers. I sent one message. Heads up. Danny's been having an affair with Dr. Neil from imaging. She's been lying to me for months and told her own lab she was on a writing retreat while spending nights at his place. Just thought you should know who you're citing at your next ethics symposium. I didn't say anything else. Didn't start drama. Just facts. A few hours later, I got a response from Laura, the grad student. Wow, that explains so much. Later that night, Danny texted me one last time. Why are you trying to ruin my career now? This is textbook retaliation. No, Danny. This is consequences. You played with people's trust like it was a thesis project. You dissected my emotions, lied with a straight face, and tried to make yourself the hero of your own messy little betrayal story. And now? You're just upset the control group talked back. It turns out I wasn't the only one she'd been playing mind games with. After I dropped the truth into that chat with her colleagues, I figured it might just blow over, or they'd stay out of it. But no. Within 2 days, I started getting messages from people in her department, people I barely even remembered meeting at those stiff faculty parties where I stood around drinking sparkling water and pretending to care about grant funding. Apparently, Danny had built herself a little tower of ego and burned bridges under it. Laura, the grad student who'd replied first, sent me a follow-up. She told me Neil was mentoring her on her postdoc pivot, but she always got weirdly cagey when I asked about it. She even canceled 2 of our weekly lab meetings and said it was forced strategic isolation. I thought it was just burnout. Nope, just adultery disguised as academic rigor. Then someone else chimed in, a quiet postdoc named Marvin who was always polite but never made eye contact. He messaged me late at night. Honestly, man, she's been treating us like garbage for a year. She used to be cool, collaborative, but lately it's all cryptic assignments and passive-aggressive comments. I think she's been checked out for a long time. One by one, they started realizing the pattern. Danny wasn't just dishonest with me. She'd been manipulating everyone around her to keep her little affair afloat and make herself look like some overworked, misunderstood genius. I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. These people weren't just coworkers, they were her students, mints, teammates. She was supposed to lead them. Instead, she used them like props. And then the real kicker. Her university's ethics board got involved. I didn't file anything, but someone else did. I assume it was one of the grad students who had enough. Apparently, Neil was on a review committee for internal research awards, and Danny's name had come up, more than once. Let's just say mixing personal relationships with academic favoritism isn't exactly smiled upon in tenure-track land. She'd always preached about ethics, about transparency, about data integrity. But when it came down to it, she was just another manipulator hiding behind big words and polished PowerPoints. And now? The rats in her lab had teeth, and they'd stopped biting their tongues. You ever hear about neuroplasticity? It's this incredible thing the brain can do, rewire itself. Adapt, change, heal. That used to be one of Danny's favorite topics. She'd go on these passionate tangents about how trauma doesn't have to define us, how the brain writes over the past with new patterns if given the right environment. I used to sit in awe listening to her talk like that. I thought I was lucky, married to someone who didn't just understand the brain, but believed in healing. What a joke. Now I realize all that talk about change and growth and rewiring, it never applied to her. It applied to me. I was supposed to do the changing. I was supposed to forgive, accept, evolve, adapt, while she lied, cheated, and intellectualized it all into some noble journey. Turns out, the only thing plastic in our relationship wasn't just the brain. It was her version of love. When I looked back at our marriage, really looked, not just the highlight reel, I saw it. The subtle ways she made me feel small if I didn't match her level of intellectual engagement. How she'd correct me in front of friends, or pretend not to hear my opinions during debates, only to repeat them later as her own. The gaslighting. The passive-aggressive digs masked as feedback. I thought we were building something real together. She was building a brand, a carefully managed identity, the neuroscientist wife who could do it all. And I was just the arm candy who paid the electric bill and clapped at her TEDx talk. But neuroplasticity? That part's real. Because I did change. After the divorce papers were served and her professional life started cracking under the weight of her lies, I stopped seeing myself as the guy who got duped. I started seeing myself as the guy who walked away. You don't realize how warped your thinking has become until you step outside the echo chamber. I stopped apologizing for things I didn't do. Stopped questioning whether I was overreacting or emotionally dysregulated. I was reacting just fine. I just had the misfortune of being married to someone who treated empathy like a case study instead of a core value. So yeah, neuroplasticity. The brain can rewire itself after damage. So can a heart. Here's where it gets ridiculous. A week after the university's ethics review committee dropped their findings on Danny, spoiler, it wasn't good, she somehow had the nerve to send me a message. Not a "Hey, can we talk?" or "I'm sorry." Nope. She sent me a 12-minute voice note. In it, she gave a full lecture on the importance of trust in relationships. How trust is the fundamental neurotransmitter of connection, how breaches cause neural disintegration and trauma, and how we need to rebuild trust through intentional vulnerability and transparency. I mean, seriously? The woman who lied to my face for months, who hid entire weeks of her life in another man's apartment, was preaching to me about trust? I wanted to laugh, or scream, or both. Her voice was calm but dripping with this fake sadness, like she was performing for an audience of disappointed scientists. I replied with one sentence. Actions speak louder than lectures. Of course, she never responded. Her whole career started unraveling after that. The ethics board put a temporary hold on her research funding. Some colleagues started distancing themselves. She dropped out of a conference she was supposed to keynote. Meanwhile, I was quietly rebuilding my life. Reflection. It struck me how much we try to rationalize betrayal with fancy words, how people hide behind intellect to avoid owning their mistakes. I was caught in that trap, thinking if only I could understand her brain better, I could fix everything. Turns out, some things are about character, not neurons. After all the chaos, after the lies, and the public unraveling, it was time for me to rebuild. Not just my life, but my sense of self. I dove into things that made me feel human again, not just a walking lab rat in a toxic experiment. I started journaling about the brain, not like Danny did, all fancy jargon and lectures, but just simple reflections. How our brains can get rewired by trauma, but also by kindness, patience, and honest connections. It's funny, learning about the brain as a biological marvel helped me realize the emotional mess I'd been through wasn't just about betrayal. It was about how we think, feel, and heal. I reached out to a therapist who specialized in trauma and relationships. I wasn't ashamed to ask for help. Because your brain isn't just neurons firing randomly. It's shaped by every experience, every betrayal, every healing moment. I started rebuilding friendships I'd neglected. Going to the gym again, running, no more jogging with a lying spouse. Reading books that weren't neuroscience textbooks, but novels that made me feel something. Slowly, the fog lifted. The pain dulled. I learned to trust myself again. Advice to anyone reading this. Don't get caught in the idea that just understanding why someone betrayed you will make it easier to deal with. Sometimes people just lie because they want to, because they're selfish, because they don't care. It's okay to feel broken. It's okay to seek help. But remember, your brain and your heart can heal. You're not stuck in the pain. Take your time. Rewire your thinking. Trust again, but this time, trust yourself first. Here's the wildest part. After all the dust settled, after the ethics board released their final report, the truth finally caught up with Danny in a way I never expected. It wasn't me who exposed her. Not directly, anyway. One of her closest colleagues, someone who had always admired her work but grew tired of the lies, went public with an anonymous expose to the university newspaper. They detailed not only the affair with Neil, but also the pattern of manipulation and the toxic environment Danny created in her lab. The university had no choice but to launch a full investigation. I watched from the sidelines as Danny's carefully constructed image crumbled piece by piece. Her conference invitations rescinded, her grant applications denied, and her reputation shredded. Meanwhile, I kept my head down and focused on myself. No drama, no petty revenge. It felt surreal to see the woman who once made me question my own sanity publicly dismantled by her own actions. I won't lie, there was a bittersweet satisfaction in it. But mostly, I felt relief. Relief that the truth finally won, even if it took a painful journey to get there. Reflection. Sometimes, no matter how smart someone thinks they are, they can't outthink the consequences of their choices. And no matter how complex the brain is, it can't fully protect you from heartbreak or betrayal. But the human spirit? That's the real marvel. Looking back, there are a ton of things I wish I had told myself when all this started, when I first noticed the cracks in Danny's perfect brainy facade. First, trust your gut. I spent way too long doubting myself because she was so convincing with her science talk and emotional manipulation. If something feels off, it probably is. Second, don't let anyone gaslight you. She twists every conversation into making me feel like the unstable one. I let that eat at my confidence for months. That was on me. Third, boundaries aren't optional. I didn't set clear lines about what was acceptable early on, and she exploited that. Being kind doesn't mean being a doormat. And lastly, self-care isn't selfish. When your brain's been rewired by betrayal, taking time to heal is crucial. Therapy, friends, hobbies, invest in all of that. Advice. If you're going through something similar, know this. It's okay to be angry, sad, confused, and everything in between. Your brain might feel like it's been hit by a ton of bricks, but you will heal. You will rewire your thinking and come out stronger. Don't let anyone make you feel small or crazy for feeling the way you do. You deserve honesty, respect, and love. Here we are, the last part of this mess, and honestly, it feels a bit surreal to be here, typing it out after everything. The brain really is a biological marvel. The billions of neurons firing, the synapses rewiring constantly, it's incredible how much power we have inside our heads to heal and to learn. But here's the thing I learned the hard way. Love isn't just about brain chemistry or clever neuroscience terms. It's about trust, honesty, respect, and real connection. No amount of scientific knowledge can mask betrayal or make up for lies. Danny thought she could use her brain as a shield and a weapon, wrapping herself in intellectual superiority while twisting the truth. But brains don't exist in isolation. They live inside people, inside relationships with feelings and consequences. So what now? I'm moving forward. Not perfect, not suddenly immune to pain, but stronger, wiser, more careful about who I trust, more aware that sometimes the smartest people can do the most stupid things. If you're reading this and feeling lost, know that your brain can heal, your heart can heal, and you can come out of this story writing your own ending, one where you are the hero, not the victim. Thanks for sticking with me through this roller coaster. If anyone needs advice, wants to vent, or just talk, I'm here. Stay strong. End of story.